All right, let's get started if everyone's ready. So I'm Elizabeth Olson. I'm a program manager at Microsoft working on identity and the B2B platform. And today I'm going to be talking to you about granting partners and suppliers access to resources using Azure Active Directory B2B collaboration. And I didn't quite get the award for longest title at the conference, but it was really close, so I think I can get it next year. So B2B is a set of capabilities within Azure Active Directory that enables organizations of all sizes and in all industries to collaborate easily with people using any account in a secure and trustworthy manner while maintaining their compliance and governance requirements. And so let's dig in a little bit about what that means. So if you don't have B2B and you want to collaborate with someone outside of your directory, there's really two ways that you can accomplish that scenario. You can either create a new account for that user you want to collaborate with and give that new account access to your resources in your directory. But that has a problem that there's no linkage between those accounts. So if that user leaves the company they came from, you have no way of knowing that on your side, and they can keep using the credentials that you gave them to access your content indefinitely until you realize what's happened and revoke them. So that's a big problem. It's also hard to maintain that account, and you have to keep updating your credentials and whatnot. So a lot of people go a separate route, and instead of creating a new user, they instead just send the content right over. And now you've got two problems, because not only is that content not in sync anymore, so when you make changes on one side, you have to manually port it over to the other side and vice versa. So that's a really frustrating end user experience. But also, you don't control that content anymore, and it can go anywhere. So that's a big problem as well. Now, when you use B2B, the way this works and the reason why it's so powerful is that when you go to collaborate with someone using B2B, we create kind of a shadow user account for them. So in most respects, this looks like a real user, but the key difference is that it doesn't have any credentials associated with it. Whenever that user comes to authenticate, they always go back to their home tenant in order to actually go through the authentication process. And what that means is that when user B disappears over in their side, user B in your system can no longer authenticate, and they automatically lose access to anything that you've shared with them without you having to do anything. So that can be a really powerful way to protect your resources. B2B is also one of our fastest growing features. We currently have more than 100 million new guest users invited every month. So we're really excited about this, and we see a lot of our customers taking a big bet on it. We think that generally everyone has an external collaboration scenario, and B2B is really the way to get that done. So today I want to talk to you about three main points. I want to talk about how B2B enables you to collaborate really easily and seamlessly with your external folks. I want to talk about how secure and trustworthy B2B is, and also how B2B helps you maintain your compliance and governance requirements. So first of all, let's talk about the end user experience for B2B and how it helps people collaborate easily. So the thing about B2B is it's actually the easiest way for people to share their content. It's the same gesture for end users to invite a guest as to share with an internal user. So they don't have to learn new mechanisms or new pathways. They can just do it all in the same seamless way. And on the other side, your guests only have to remember the one credential, which means it's a lot easier for them to get in and remember what they're doing rather than having to maintain multiple credentials and remember which password goes with which account or anything like that. We generally know that when users are given multiple accounts, it tends to increase the difficulty for them dramatically. The other great thing about B2B is that it's already built into a lot of the products that you're already using. So for the Microsoft products that are using Azure Active Directory as their user store, like Teams, Office 365 Groups, SharePoint, and the Office client when working with SharePoint documents, Power BI, Visual Studio, and more, the same gestures that they use for sharing internally and collaborating internally can also be used to invite guest users. So it's all built in, it's all seamless, and for both end users and for guests, it all works exactly the way they expect it to. They don't even have to think about it. It also works seamlessly with custom apps and resources, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, but because guests are really just users in Azure Active Directory, an app or resource that's using Azure Active Directory to maintain its authorization layer will get the benefit of guests almost for free, in some cases completely for free. It largely depends on what that app is using to decide whether or not someone gets a certain experience. So if they're using things like user display name or email address, those exist on guests as well. If they're using a claim that's specific to employees, then you might have to do a little bit of coding to handle the case where that claim doesn't come in the token. But by and large, the changes needed to handle guests are generally pretty small. And so you can expose your third-party apps and resources or your custom LOB apps to your guests as well and enable scenarios like guests submitting expenses in your expense report system or being embedded in a workflow app you might have. So that can be a really powerful way of enabling guests to collaborate with you in your system. Now, you might have recently noticed that we talked about how we're allowing Google users to come in directly as guests using Google Federation. But that's actually part of a broader effort on our part to enable guests to come in with any identity they have. We kind of jokingly but kind of seriously call this concept bring your own identity, kind of like bring your own beer but with identity. And the idea is that we don't care what kind of account you come in with. We just want to make sure we can authenticate you with it and then get you into the resources that you need to collaborate with. And we know that it can be really frustrating when you're trying to collaborate with someone and you need to know what kind of account they have in order to know what pathway you need to use with them. And we want to take away that difficulty and just say, as long as they have an email address, we'll figure out how to authenticate them. You just work on the authorization and the collaboration that you want to do. And so in order to enable that vision, we have a few features that we've already released, a feature in public preview, and also a couple features in private preview. So the way to think about this is that you have multiple types of partners. You have partners who are on Azure Active Directory, and obviously their Azure Active Directory accounts work just fine coming in as guests. But there's also some scenarios where they have Azure Active Directory, but they have some users that aren't in the directory yet. They might be on-prem or in some other system. And for those users who aren't in Azure Active Directory yet, we can still authenticate them using a feature called one-time passcodes that I'll drill into in a little bit. For another kind of partner who might be IT managed but not using Azure Active Directory for some strange reason, we can still authenticate those users as well through either direct federation, where we can federate directly with a SAML or WSFed provider, or through one-time passcodes again, because one-time passcodes are going to kind of become our fallback option for anyone who we can't directly federate with. We can still authenticate that they own that email address. And then finally, you probably have some partners who don't have an IT shop. Maybe they're self-employed or they just work for themselves in a small shop where they're just using social identities. And in that case, we have a few different options. We can federate with Microsoft accounts directly. We can federate with Gmail accounts directly. And again, we can use one-time passcodes for anything we can't federate directly. So to dig into those a little bit, Google Federation was recently announced in public preview, so you can go play with it and try it out today. But what this does is it enables users with Gmail accounts to come in as guests using B2B whenever you invite their Gmail account. So this isn't saying that anyone with a Gmail account can suddenly come in if you federate with Google. Don't worry. But it means that if you do invite a Gmail user, that they get a seamless experience coming in using their existing Gmail credentials, and they don't have to create a new account or get any kind of brick wall experience. It's very seamless for them. And I'll show you that in my demo in a little bit. Along the same lines, we've got direct federation, which is still in private preview. So that's coming out in a few months, but it's not quite available yet. And this feature will enable an admin to set up B2B authentication with any other identity provider that supports SAML or WSFed. And frankly, that's just about all of them. So this will enable you, for partners that you work with closely, to set up a kind of handshake and enable those users to get a very native experience with their accounts as well. This can also be a solution for hybrid environments where you might have some people in ADFS that you want to allow into your organization using a B2B account, and that's possible to do using direct federation. And then the final feature in the bring your own identity space that we're talking about today is one-time passcodes. And so this is also in private preview. It's not quite available for you to play with today, but I'll show you how it works, and you can look forward to it coming in a few months. And what this does is it supports authentication of basically any user with an email address. And so if we can give them a more seamless experience using federation, we will. So if they have a Gmail account or a Microsoft account or an Azure Active Directory account, we'll use that native experience. But if they have a Yahoo account or some account at a provider we've never heard of before, we still want to give them a first-class experience and bring them in as a guest. But in order to authenticate them, we're going to have to use a one-time passcode that they'll round trip through their email address and then paste back into our system. And what that does is that proves they still have the email address that you invited, and so you can be relatively secure that they're still the person that you were intending to collaborate with. So for example, if they had an @Fabricam account that wasn't federated, they would round trip that email from their @Fabricam email address. And if they lost access to that @Fabricam email address, they would lose access to your system as well. So it's kind of the same type of security as any of the other systems, just a different mechanism for handling the authentication. And the one point I really want to stress when it comes to one-time passcodes is as I've been talking to people about it, a lot of people seem to assume that these are going to be second-class guests. They're not going to have all the functionality of other guests. And that's not true at all. These are still first-class guests in the Azure Active Directory system. You can put the same control mechanisms on them as you would any other guest. You can give them the same access to resources or apps as you would for any other guest. It's just their authentication mechanism is a little bit different than everybody else. But that doesn't affect what kind of rights or controls you can put on them. So with that, I'm going to just move into the demo and show you how that all works, because as much as I can talk about it forever, I think it's a lot more powerful to just show you how it all comes together. And before I switch over to my demo machine, I'm actually going to set the stage for that demo because it's got a lot of moving parts. So we're going to start with April, who's a producer at a major movie studio working on the next blockbuster hit. She's got a few $1 million in her budget that she's got to work with, so she's going to bring in a lot of partners to work with her on this project. And she works at Contoso, which is a major movie studio, and they use Azure Active Directory. But her partners probably don't, because a lot of people in this business are smaller suppliers. So first she's going to work with Mabel, who's a casting consultant. And Mabel is self-employed and just uses a Microsoft account for her business. But April doesn't need to know that. She's just going to invite Mabel to work with her in teams like she would anyone else. And they'll both have a seamless experience going through that process. April's then going to invite Zelma, who's a script doctor, to work with her on the script for the movie and make sure that it's got the best possible dialogue and plot and everything else. And they're going to collaborate through Word. And Zelma, being a self-employed script doctor, is just going to use her Yahoo account for her business. And again, April doesn't need to know about that, doesn't need to do anything special. And Zelma, because she's using an account we don't have a direct federation relationship with, is going to show you what that one-time passcode experience looks like. But I'm going to save that for another demo, so hold on, it's all coming later. And then Hector is their caterer. He uses a Gmail account because he's got his own small business, but it's not quite big enough to require any IT, so they just use social accounts. And April's going to collaborate with him using an Office 365 group and through the Outlook web client. She's going to collaborate with Sumaira, who's her marketing director, or her advertising partner. And Sumaira works at a company that has an ADFS system that they haven't quite moved everybody up to the cloud yet. So she's still on-prem, but April, again, doesn't need to worry about that. She just does sharing the same way she's used to through SharePoint. And then Sumaira, since she's worked with April in the past, she's worked with Contoso in the past, she also knows where their expense report app is, and she has access to it already. So she's going to start submitting her expenses because she definitely wants to get paid for this project. And then finally, April's going to collaborate with Bo, who is a market consultant at Fabricam. And he and April are going to collaborate through Power BI. And Bo just happens to have an Azure Active Directory account, but again, April doesn't really need to know that as she goes through this. So now that I've showed you all that, just in time for my computer to go to sleep, of course. All right, so let me switch over. And we're going to start on April's system. And so she's just going to go through the apps that she normally uses to get her job done. She's going to start in Teams, and she's got a channel for the casting choices, and she wants to invite Mabel to the conversation so that they can collaborate and talk about who they should cast. So she'll invite Mabel's email address, and you can see that I've been practicing because Teams already thinks it knows about this email address. But it gives me this experience to invite Mabel as a guest because it realizes that Mabel is not someone in the system already. And as April, if I were to get that message and I wasn't intending to invite an external person, that would give me some pause and make me realize, oh wait, I'm not sharing with Mabel down the hall, I'm sharing with Mabel somewhere else in the world. So that would make them change their behavior. But if that's what she's intending, that's fine. Teams also gives April an experience to fix up the name associated with that account because at this point, the system only knows the email address, but April obviously knows the human she's actually going to be collaborating with. So she can make that experience a little bit better. And so she can add Mabel, and then Teams under the covers is calling the B2B system, creating a guest user, and sending an invitation. But to April, that's all seamless. She just added Mabel the way she would any other user. She closes that, and now she can start talking to Mabel right away and say something like, hey Mabel, please look at script in files and give me some suggestions on casting. All right, so she sent that off. Now Mabel's got an invitation to come collaborate with her in Teams. Doing that reminds her that she hasn't actually sent the script off to the script doctor yet. So she's going to go over to Word, where she's got the script open, and it is seriously the best script ever. It's going to be a major hit. So she opens the sharing dialog, and this is again the same gesture that she would use to share with somebody down the hall from her office, and she can use this experience to share with someone across the world if that's who she's partnering with. Now, of course, the demo gremlins are getting in the way of actually having the dialogue load for some reason. So let me try it again and see if it's just I happen to use the wrong timing. The demo gremlins are strong today. So you know what? I'm going to just go up to OneDrive itself, and I'll share from there because that's certainly available as well. So I'll open the script. Let everything render, and then we'll share from here. So here we go. We've got the sharing dialog. And so the system will recognize that that is an email account that isn't part of the directory. So it again gives her this warning that this person happens to be outside of the organization. But it doesn't stop her. It just makes her aware that if she's not intending to share it outside of the directory, then she should do something else. So she can say, please punch up the script and send that off. And again, that's going to create a B2B user under the covers in Azure Active Directory and send an email to that account, giving them access and inviting them in to collaborate on the script. So now she's done that, and it's getting towards lunchtime, so she's getting kind of hungry, which reminds her that she needs to loop in Hector, her caterer, to work with them for the catering for the shoots. So for that, she's going to go over to her mailbox. And she's going to go to the O365 group that she's already created to collaborate with the people inside of her organization on their shooting schedule. But she's also going to add Hector using the same member experience that she does for everything else. And now you see that she gets a bit of a warning that this is an external user again, but the system doesn't prevent her from doing it because members are allowed to share in this in Contoso. It just tells her that Hector's a guest, and if she's not intending to share with a guest, then she should probably rethink what she's doing. So now Hector's been added, and she can start a conversation to tell people that they need to tell Hector what kind of dietary restrictions they have. So she'll just send everybody a quick message. Please put food requirements, and I can't spell or type when people are looking, in group OneNote for Hector. So she'll send that off, and that'll send a message to everyone in the group, including Hector, even though his email account is over in Gmail somewhere. So now that she's done that, she wants to share some assets with Sumaira, who's her marketing consultant. And they've been working on a campaign where April promised her some files to use in that campaign. So she'll type in Sumaira's email address. And since Sumaira's already been working with April and at Contoso as a consultant for a while, she actually is already in the system as a guest, but the sharing dialog will still warn April that Sumaira is outside of the organization. So again, if that's not what she's intending to do, she'll know not to share with this person. But since she does actually want to work with Sumaira, she's going to keep going and say, here are the assets I told you about. Send that off. And then the final thing is she wants to bring in Bo, her market consultant, and share with him a bunch of data that they have in Power BI so that he can start putting together their next proposal for the release. And so she'll share this. And Bo's email address is one that I actually can't memorize, so I'm going to just copy paste it in. And again, she gets that experience of warning her that she's sharing with an external user, so if that's not what she's intending, then she'll know to rethink that. But she can just tell him, here are the numbers. Please propose release, schedule, locations. So she'll share that. And so April has managed to go through all of her partners and consultants that she needs to bring in and collaborate with in the Contoso system. And now that she's done that, let's switch over and see what the experience is on the other side as guests. So to do that, I've actually set up a bunch of different VMs so that they get the single sign-on experience and whatnot. So first we're going to start with Mabel, who's the casting consultant using a Microsoft account. And we're going to check her email, where she's already got a couple emails from April telling her that she wants to collaborate over Teams. So she got this email telling her that April added her to a Teams channel. And she also got an email that April's really trying to reach her right now and has mentioned her by name. So she can open Teams, and she'll get single sign-on because she's already logged in the browser with her Microsoft account. But when it goes through the flow of trying to access the Contoso system, the system recognizes she's never been to Contoso before, and so it stops and asks if she's sure she wants to share her information with Contoso, because it's kind of a two-way street here. But she's fine with that, so she hits accept, and that fully hydrates her guest account, so now it's linked back to authenticate with the Microsoft account system whenever she comes back. And when Teams renders, it will put her directly in that team that she's been invited to, and she can start collaborating with April right away. As soon as Teams loads. She's going to skip the first run experience because she doesn't have time for it right now. She's got to start this conversation. But she can see that April's trying to talk to her. She can see that her name is mentioned and it's an @ for her. So she'll say, I'm on it. And then she'll go straight to the files of that channel and start looking at that script that April shared with her. And that's just right there for her, and she can start collaborating right away. And it's a really seamless experience for her. So now that she's got that, we'll switch over, and we're going to skip Zalma with her one-time passcode for a minute. We'll follow up with that in the second demo. But for now, we're going to start with Hector, who's her caterer using a Gmail account. And so he's going to open up his inbox and see that he's got an email from April as well, saying that there's food requirements in the group OneNote for Hector. And so he can go and view the group files. And he's still got single sign-on with his Gmail account, but he's going to have to go through the same consent experience that Mabel did. So he's going to pick his Gmail account and then he's going to agree again to share his information with Contoso. And then this is, again, that hydrating step where his guest account that was already created but not pointing to a particular provider now is explicitly linked back to his Gmail account. And so now he's in the group. He can see all the group documents in the group OneNote. And so he can come over here and see that there's a food section, and he assumes that's for him as the caterer. And everyone started putting in their food preferences, and so he knows now he has to create a meal that doesn't use dairy or carbs or peanuts or quinoa. And I'm sure he'll figure something out. He's good at catering. So now we'll move on, just a couple more. So we'll move on to Sumaira, and she's an advertising partner. She works at the Graphic Design Institute, And they're still running ADFS. They haven't moved into the cloud yet, but she's still going to have a seamless experience. I'm not going to show you her email address because I didn't want to deal with putting an email address set up on-prem, so she doesn't have one actually. But she can still sign in because she's got a record in ADFS that she can use. So we're going to go to the SharePoint link that she would have been sent if it wasn't an email. And we'll type in her email address. And so this is going to redirect to the ADFS sign-in experience on-prem. So she uses the password that she's already used to, signs in with that. And now since she's already been working with Contoso for a while, she doesn't have that consent step that the other accounts did. She just has to choose whether or not the browser should remember her. So she clicks yes because everyone loves single sign-on. And now as soon as she's done that, she's in the SharePoint site. She can access those resources that were shared with her, and she can start collaborating on them. Now, she's also, like I said, she's worked with Contoso for a while, so she knows how Contoso does their expense tracking and whatnot, and she also knows that she wants to get her expenses submitted early so that she can get paid faster. And so she goes to the Contoso apps page that she has access to now that she's a guest, and they've exposed the Contoso expenses app to all of the guests in the Contoso system so that guests can submit expenses as well. So she'll open up this expenses app. And I just want to spend a minute explaining what this app is and how it was built. So I actually went and took our Azure Active Directory web app sample, and I went through the setup for that. Took about 10 minutes, 20 minutes or so to set it up. I changed a few things to turn it into an expenses app, but technically under the covers it's not actually saving any of those expenses, so Sumaira's never going to get paid. But I at least put the form in so it looks like she can. But the thing that I thought was interesting is that I built it for Azure Active Directory users and using the Azure Active Directory sample. And then when I came in and started using my guest users in the app, I didn't have to make any changes to it. It just worked straight up from day one without me changing a single line of code to enable guest users. So I thought that was a really powerful experience. And I really encourage you to try that out if you've got a lot of guests and a lot of apps that you want to expose to them. So here I'm just going to sign in, and I get single sign-on because I'm already signed in this browser as Sumaira. And I can file a new expense, and you can notice that it's already picking up Sumaira's name off of her user account. And she's going to say that this is a consulting fee, and she wants to be paid $1 million. She'll submit that, and then unfortunately Contoso didn't implement the database, so it's just dropped on the floor, but maybe next time she'll get paid when she submits that. All right, and then the last thing I'm going to show you in this particular demo is the experience for Bo, who's coming in as her marketing consultant. And he's from Fabricam. He has an Azure Active Directory account. And he also has this email from April saying that she wants to collaborate on this dashboard. And so he clicks the link to go to the dashboard. He gets single sign-on as well because he's already signed in the browser. But again, he gets this consent experience because he hasn't been in the Contoso directory before either, so he accepts to share his information. And then once he gets through that process of hydrating his account, he has access to all the, I knew the gremlins were going to get me. The funny thing is that this doesn't happen when I practice in my hotel room, just when I do it in front of people. But I swear he would actually get to the Power BI dashboard and see all that data and be able to drill in and all that other good stuff. It was really awesome when it worked. So we'll try that again later and see if the gremlins have gone away. But yeah, it's looking like it's not going to play nice right now. So we're just going to switch back to the presentation. So what I showed you in that one was April sharing with a bunch of different people. She shared with Mabel using a Microsoft account through Teams. And I showed you the experience both sharing and receiving that invitation. She shared with Zelma using Word, but I didn't show you the experience of Zelma coming in because I wanted to save that for the next demo. I showed you April sharing with Hector through Office 365 groups and Hector's experience coming in as a guest using his Gmail account. I showed you April sharing a SharePoint document library with Sumaira and how she came in with her ADFS account and also used that to use a custom app they had. And the experience for April sharing with Bo and Bo's experience trying to access that Power BI dashboard, which I swear works most of the time. So moving on, well, let's talk about how secure and trustworthy that is. I've shown you all the end user experiences, and it's super great and streamlined for them. But how can you be sure that this is actually a secure system? How can you feel comfortable that we're really authenticating the users properly and that it's only the people that you want to have access to your system? So one thing that I think is important whenever we talk about security, we also have to talk about the human element. The most secure system in the world is probably some dusty server that's unplugged, sitting in a closet somewhere in a locked house. But clearly that's not very usable. So we need to figure out a system that works for the humans involved as well. And the thing that I think is most powerful about B2B is that it ensures that the easiest path for external collaboration is the one that you can see and control and manage. And then on the other side, because guests are really much more likely to remember their own credentials than any credential that you give them, they're much more likely to keep that secure and not do something silly like write it on a Post-it next to their desktop or maybe save it in a text file on their computer. Another thing that I want to emphasize a few times is this idea of the authorization step being decoupled from the authentication step. And what that means is that the authorization can happen in the place that's most suited for it, while the authentication happens where it's most suited, and the authorization is the thing that you really care about, and that's the part that you control. So in this example, we'll say a Fabricam user is trying to access some Contoso content. And now the content clearly doesn't know anything about authentication and authorization, and it trusts the system to do that. So it immediately kicks the user over to the Contoso sign-in experience. Now, the Contoso sign-in recognizes this user as a Fabricam user, so it redirects over to the Fabricam experience because the Fabricam system is the best place for the Fabricam user to authenticate. The Fabricam system authenticates the user and then kicks them back to the Contoso experience with a token that securely identifies them as an authenticated user. And then Contoso uses that to look up that user and what access they should have and sends a token to the content with their authorization. So that decoupling of the responsibilities is a really powerful thing that really only B2B in Azure Active Directory can give you. The other thing that's really powerful from a security standpoint is conditional access. And we've had a lot of sessions on conditional access, so I'm not going to drill in too much about what conditional access is. But the thing that I really need to stress is that you can apply conditional access to guests in the same way that you apply it to members of your organization. And I've had a lot of people that I've talked to this week in particular be kind of surprised by that, so I'm going to emphasize that a little bit more. So just like you can say for your users that they can only access certain apps when they're on your network or using a managed device or in a particular location or things like that, you can do the same with your guest users. So you might have a guest user on-prem working in your system, and you give them a managed device, but they still use their own credentials to interact with your system. So that can be a really powerful way of separating the responsibilities to the people and the systems that handle them the best. So now I'm going to move over and do another demo. And I'm going to introduce one more character into our demo cast, and that's Ingrid, who's our IT admin at Contoso. And she has recently realized that she wants to turn on MFA for everyone accessing the system, not just her employees, because she's realized that everybody wants to know about movies before they get released. They're a big target for hackers, and she wants to protect her assets. So she's going to turn on conditional access MFA for all of her guests. She also wants all of her guests to agree to a terms of use that they agree that they won't leak any data or talk to the press until the movie's out and released. And then we're going to go back and actually show the experience of Zelma coming in as a one-time passcode user and show how these conditional access policies apply to her as well. So let me switch over again. We'll bring up Ingrid's machine. And of course, she's already got the Azure Active Directory, or she's got the Azure portal open with the Azure Active Directory blade open, because who doesn't want to sit and look at this all day? You can kind of see the sign-ins that have been happening in the tenant as I've been practicing my demos leading up to Ignite. And then when we got to Ignite, I didn't have time to practice anymore, so that activity went way down. Also, if you don't follow me on Twitter, I'm just going to warn you, if you go home and you start playing around with external identities in a demo tenant, you might get tagged as a spammer and locked out of your account. And then you get to call support, and they're very nice about it, but just a warning, don't be surprised if that happens, because you look very suspicious if all you're doing is sending external invitations and not actually doing any work within your own organization. And I learned that the hard way, so I figure I should pass on that advice to you. So anyway, she's going to go to her organizational relationships blade, and this is kind of where we're starting to group all of that guest experience and guest settings and whatnot. And you can see the guests that are coming into her system. She's going to open the terms of use, and she's got a terms of use file that her lawyers have already given her, so she's going to create new terms. She'll call it TOSO guest TOU. And this is probably the only example in history where I'd actually want to use the example text that's in the box, but I gotta type it out. And then I'll upload that PDF and tell the system what language it's in, because we can support showing different languages to different users. So if you had guest users coming in from multiple locations and you wanted to have a terms of use that was specific to their particular language, you could set that up in the system, but today we're just going to do English. And we're also going to require that guests actually expand those terms, because we actually want them to read it. We don't just want them to click through. And we're going to use a policy that targets access to any cloud app for all guests and create that. So now she knows that any guest coming in going forward will get this TOU prompt, and whether and that's true whether they're coming in for the first time or if they've already been in the system and they're coming in for the second time or the 5th time or the 500th time. If they haven't agreed to the TOU, they're going to get a prompt that asks them to agree to it. So now she's going to go to conditional access and set up MFA for those guests as well. So of course, Ingrid has already enabled MFA for all of her employees because she knows that MFA is the right thing to do. But up until this point, she'd had an exception for guests because she wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do for her guest experience. But she's actually decided that she doesn't want to have any exceptions. All users accessing anything have to do MFA. So she'll save that. And now any guest user who tries to access the system is going to get a prompt to complete MFA as well. And if they don't have MFA set up, they're going to have to set it up in that experience. So let's show you what that looks like when we come in as Zelma. So Zelma, like I said, is the script doctor. She's got a Yahoo Mail account, so we don't know how to directly federate with that. She's going to go through the one-time passcode experience. So she's going to check her email. And she's got an email from April asking her to collaborate on this script. So she'll click the link to open it. And then she'll put in her email address. And then SharePoint's going to tell her she needs to go over to Contoso to get verified, because SharePoint as the app doesn't really know who she is. So she'll put in her email address. And now we recognize that we don't know how to federate, but we do know how to send her a code to her email. So we send her a code. She'll go back to her email, and she gets this verification code, which she'll copy, paste in, and that gets her through the authentication step. She's now fully authenticated, and from this point on, everything else looks the same way as it did for any other guest user. So she has to go through the same consent experience. And now, since Ingrid has turned on conditional access MFA and a terms of use, she's going to actually have to set that up here as well. So here she's getting the prompt that tells her she needs to set up MFA. And luckily, she's already got the Authenticator app because everybody should. So she's just going to go through the process of setting up a new account in the app. Hit next, get the notification that it all worked. There we go. And so now she's got MFA set up for her account, and next time she comes in with her next one-time passcode, she'll still get MFA prompts as well. And then she also needs to agree to that terms of use that Ingrid set up, so she'll get redirected to that. She can try to accept it without reading it, but that's not going to work. So she'll open it up, actually read through it, because you all read that really quick while I scrolled through, right? She'll accept that. And now that she's gone through all the steps that Ingrid put in front of her to make sure that she really is who she says she is and that the system is secure, she gets to the script and she can start punching it up. Maybe say that couple separates because of aliens. All right, so that's the experience for a one-time passcode user. And you can see that she has a very rich experience once she's through the authentication step. She has the same controls that would be put on any other guest account. So that's a really great way of enabling collaboration while still keeping that security and trustworthiness that you'd expect. So now let me talk a bit about compliance and governance, because now that we've got this great experience for end users and we can be sure that the people coming in are who they say they are, well, how do you make sure that the right people are in your system in general and know what they're doing and that they're doing it in the right way? So once again, I'm going to come back to this point of managing authorization, not authentication. Because guests are bringing their own ID, you no longer have to manage their credentials, and you can spend that time and energy making sure that they're doing the right thing in your system rather than worrying about how they got in the first place, and worry just about the controls you put in place. Now, we've got a lot of features in this space to help you control that access and make sure that only the right things are happening, and also notice when the wrong things are happening. So first of all, we have guest access reviews. And this is a feature that's available now. You can run this in your system today as soon as you walk out of this room. And this is a feature that enables you to periodically review the guest access in your directory. So the reviewer can be whoever you want, which includes the guests themselves. You might want to run a review that just have all the guests in your system self-attest whether or not they still need to be there. And that can be really powerful in cases where you might never have run a guest access review before, and you might have hundreds or thousands of guests and you don't know where they came from or if they're still active. A guest review can help you determine which ones you want to remove to reduce your surface area. And you can also set this to happen automatically on some periodic basis. So you might say every quarter you want to review your guest access, or every week if you have a very sensitive app that you want to make sure no one is accessing without the right things in place. Those are all options that you can set up and put them kind of in automatic. The other thing that we're about to release but isn't quite there yet, so this is the part you can't play with yet, we're adding a feature to access reviews that will enable you to automatically disable or remove guests who don't pass the access review. So if they indicate they don't need access anymore, or if they just don't respond, you can automatically trim them out of your directory and help automate that process of maintaining who can access your resources. In another space, in terms of making it easier to manage who can come in the first place, we have a new feature we announced this week around entitlement management. And where this can be powerful for guests is in this concept of guest self-sign-up. We know there's a lot of situations where you might be working with a partner and you know what company you're working with. You have maybe 1 or 2 contacts there, but you don't know all of the dozens of people who you'll eventually be partnering with. And so sending individual invitations to individual people can be a real hassle in that case. And if you're in that situation, you can set up entitlement management to have a set of entitlements that you want that partner to have. So maybe access to certain apps, maybe membership in certain groups, access to certain SharePoint sites, and have them all bundled together in a single entitlement for the guest to access. And then you send a link to that entitlement over to your partner, and they can figure out who on their side needs to sign up through that link. You can also add workflow on the other side for the approval process and either have certain people or certain processes kick off when those people request access, or even for partners that you're really close to and you trust all the people on the other side, you can have automatic approval for a certain domain or a certain tenant. And you can customize a bunch of the different choices in the system, including things like the guest lifetime. So if you know your partner is going to have a short-lived time in your system, they're there to do maybe a single audit and then leave, you can set their lifetime to be like 90 days or 180 days, and then they'll automatically lose access at the end of it. So that can be really powerful as well. We also have admin consent for guest users. So you might be familiar with admin consent when it comes to apps. And so in the app space, we have user consent and admin consent. And you might have noticed that the information consent that we showed to guest users coming in looked very similar to that. So this is for situations where you might have a partner, again, you're working really, really closely with. You have lots of people coming across that boundary. And you might want to streamline their experience a little bit. And instead of having each individual user consent to sharing their information, you want to have just one admin on the partner side agree on behalf of the entire organization. And so we enable you to do that to set up a more seamless experience for your users. This can also be really helpful if you have an organization that just happens to span multiple directories for some reason, and you have a lot of collaboration going back and forth, but it doesn't really make sense to ask the users to share information from Contoso with Contoso. And in that case, you would set up this admin consent as well so that the end user experience is, again, seamless, and it doesn't feel like separate tenants to them anymore. Now, we know that some people don't want to have sharing open for everyone. They have some concerns about either particular tenants or concerns about sharing in general. And so we have controls to turn off sharing. We also have controls to turn off where you can share to. And so you might want to set an allow list of partners that you've already vetted and you know that they're safe and you're willing to let people partner with them. And that's the most restrictive option. You might also just want to limit sharing to some known bad domains. So if you have a particular competitor that you know you don't want users to ever share with, ever, you can put their domains in the deny list. And whenever someone tries to share with one of those domains, they'll get an error rather than being able to successfully share. And then finally, just a couple more things. The guest self-leave option is a new thing that we've created in our experience. And this enables guests who might have membership in multiple tenants through multiple invitations. This is really common for consultants in particular to have multiple directories they're a part of, to manage their own membership and remove themselves from directories they're no longer working in. And so before this point, someone in that situation would have to go find the IT admin of the directory, delete themselves from, ask the IT admin to delete them from the directory. And that was a hassle on the user side because who knows who the IT admin of somewhere that you've been invited into is. And then it was also a hassle on the IT admin side because why are they having to manage this particular guest user and why can't they just remove themselves? So this is an experience that we now have in the My Apps portal. You can access it there today. And so if you have a lot of directories that you're no longer collaborating with, it's a good idea to remove them just to reduce surface area. And then finally, we have an invitation API. And this is available now in Microsoft Graph. And this API allows you to create experiences or tools or automation to extend the B2B framework and build it into your own apps and experiences as well. So you can use the API to send invitations, to get the list of guest users, and we recently added the capability to filter on redemption status. So if you might want to get the list of all of your guests who have been invited but never actually come into your system, because you just, again, want to reduce your surface area there, the API has that. We didn't quite meet the deadline for Ignite, so it's rolling out probably next week. So by the time you're back in the office and you've recovered and slept for 5 days, or at least that's what I'm going to do, then it should be available by the time you're back at your desk and working on that. So with that, I'm going to show you one final demo. And in this demo, we're going to go back to Ingrid. And she's going to actually start an access review so she can kind of get a sense of which of the guests in her system still need to be there and still need their access in Contoso. And then we're going to go back to Bo, and we're going to show the experience he has, because he's going to actually come back from vacation and want to access Contoso resources, but we're going to pretend he's forgotten his password. So he's going to have to reset that and go through that experience. Since while he was on vacation, Ingrid set up conditional access MFA and also terms of use. He's going to have to set that up as well. But when he's done, hopefully this time he'll be able to get to the Power BI dashboard. So cross your fingers and pray for me. And then he's also going to see an invitation from Ingrid to do an access review. So he'll go through that experience. And you'll see how it all kind of comes together. So with that, I'll slip it over again. So we're going to go back to Ingrid's machine, and we'll go back up to the organizational relationships section. And there's an entry point here for access reviews. And so these are a really powerful way. They don't just apply to guests. You can actually do access reviews on particularly sensitive apps for all users in your system. But today I'm just going to do them based on guest users. And access reviews are kind of organized into programs and controls. So the program is kind of the group of access reviews. So you might have a group of access reviews around some sensitive information you have, or some sensitive some apps, or a particular project that you want to limit access to. Or you might also just have a program around guest user access. But the controls are the access reviews themselves. So I'm going to create this one, and I'll call it TOSO guest review. Again, I can't type in front of people, so excuse my spelling. We're going to have it start today, and this one will be a one-time one, but I could also set it up on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. So that kind of gets you out of the business of having to remember to do this every particular time and just have it happen automatically. I'll have it end in a month, and that'll give everyone time to come back if they're on vacation and respond. And if they miss the first email, they can have nag emails that'll tell them that they need to come and do this. And then I'm going to actually select a group that I created, which is a dynamic group that contains all of the guest users in the Contoso system. And so that way I know that all of my guests are going to get this access review and need to respond to keep their access. And the system warns me that I've already set one up because I have one in flight that I wanted to show you what it looked like as people have responded to it. But I'm going to ignore that and just start a new one. I'm going to set the reviewers to be the members themselves. So I could say that the group owner should do this. I could say a selected user, like I might want to say, hey, April, you've been inviting a lot of guests. Can you look over this list and tell me who you're still working with? But today I'm going to do the members themselves. I'll link to a guest access program, so it's all consolidated under a single umbrella. And then one of the interesting things is what happens when the access review is done. So I can choose to actually auto-apply the results, or I could choose to just get the results but let me take action. So I'm going to trust the system and let the system auto-apply them. And I'm going to say if the reviewer themselves doesn't respond, they ignore all these emails that we send them and they never come and tell us whether or not they need access, I'm just going to let the system decide what it should do. And that's based on their sign-in behavior that we've seen in the past 30 days or so to judge whether or not they still need the access that they've been given. And then the action to apply on denied users, I'm going to use this new option that's going to be coming out soon around block user sign-in, and then we're going to have another option around removing the account entirely. So I'll start that access review. And then I'll show you this one that I've already got in flight so that you can kind of see what it looks like as an access review is going on and as you start getting data about what access people need. So here you can see this one's in flight. I use the same settings on this one as the other one. It just started on Monday rather than today. And you can see that of the 6 guests that I had in the system at the time, 2 of them have approved themselves, so they're saying they still need access. 2 of them haven't reviewed yet. 1 of them was not notified, and 1 of them denied and said they didn't need access anymore. And you can dig into those results as well and get some information about what happened and why. And so like, for example, Bo, in the previous version of this access review, said that he was still working on the proposal, and he did that on Monday. So I can get all this information. I can download it if I want to process it myself in something like Excel, or I can write scripts to handle it or let the system handle the results itself. So now that we've done that, let's switch back over to Bo. And we're going to pretend he just came back from vacation. And we'll do that in an in-private browser. So he's probably got Windows Hello set up so that he can still get into his machine, but he's forgotten his password. So when he types in his account, which I need to copy paste because I can never remember what it is. He's going to try to put in his password, and he's forgotten it. It was a really great vacation. He no longer remembers his password. So he'll go through the password redemption flow, or reset flow, where he has to prove that he's human. And I'm notoriously bad at CAPTCHAs, so I might fail this a couple times as well. Yes, I'm human today. And then, of course, he's got the Authenticator app, so he can just put in the code rather than having to round trip a text message or anything like that. Hit next. And so now he's resetting his password in the Fabricam system. But even though he's already a guest in Contoso, there's no password synced into Contoso, so he'll be able to use these credentials immediately when he's accessing Contoso resources. So now he's ready to sign in again, uses his new password. He uses the Authenticator app for MFA. Yes, please remember the password because I can't. And then he's got some notifications here. So first we're going to try to go back to that Power BI dashboard now that we're back in the system, and we'll see if it works this time, fingers crossed. But again, since the last time he was here, there wasn't an MFA requirement and there wasn't a terms of use, he's going to actually have to go through and set that up for this account as well. So we'll go through this dance again. But of course, since he's got the Authenticator app, that makes it a lot easier and quicker. All right, there we go. And then he's also going to have to agree to the terms of use because those weren't there the last time he was here either. So now that they're a requirement on this new authentication he's doing, he needs to go through all these authorization steps as well. So he accepts. And now he gets to Power BI. I swear it worked in my hotel room this morning. I swear. But that's okay. We'll just move on. We'll go back to the mail, and we'll look into this access review that Ingrid sent out because he's definitely not done with that Power BI dashboard if he hasn't even been able to see it yet. So he's going to go review his access. And he'll get single sign-on now because he signed in this browser. He's using the same account. He's already done the consent flow and the terms of use sign-up and the MFA. So all he has to do is do his guest account review. So he'll say he still needs to be in the group. And he can say, I'm still working with April. Don't cut me off. All right, and we'll submit that. And now he's good to go. And then if April were to be just sitting on that access review and trying to see results as they come in, so she would see in her new guest access review that she's already had one response. So that can be a kind of fun and engaging way to do access reviews if you're really excited about them. Like, maybe I'm the only one, but that's okay. So she can see that he's already approved himself and that the rest of the users still haven't had a chance to open that email, click through the link, and go through that process. So let's move back. All right, so through this session, I talked you through how the end user experience is really simple and built into the experiences that people are already using from the sharing side. I told you about how guests can use their own accounts and any account they can come in with, and how it's all simple and easy and really the default choice for most users because it really is the easiest way to collaborate and removes a lot of the barriers that get in the way. On the other hand, even though there aren't any barriers from an experience perspective, it's still a very secure and trustworthy system that's using the same kind of security that you'd expect from any kind of enterprise-level software like we have. And finally, we talked a lot about the compliance and governance features we have that enable you to feel confident that the users that are in your system are the users you want to have in your system, and you can review and make sure that that's always the case, regardless of how they got in. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about how I wanted to wrap this all up and bring it all together. And I realized that as much as I'm excited about this and I really love this feature, you might think I'm a little biased because I happen to work on it. And so rather than having me wrap it up, I thought I'd actually bring in the London Business School and have them wrap it up for me, because they have a really great video that they worked on for us to tell you about their experiences.
Hi, I'm Wayne Buttigieg. I'm Head of Infrastructure and Media Services at London Business School. The two main partners that we have at London Business School are our alumni community and our executive partners. Quite often the partners have got specific requests where they actually want to be able to use their authentication system rather than use ours for security reasons, convenience reasons. In the past, this has been really hard to achieve.
B2B is effectively a framework for enabling partner collaboration. You can't survive the world without actually working with partners. And if you're not giving them the best experience in terms of identity, they're going to go and find other partners. Being one of the most prestigious universities in the world, it was essential that we create something which is world-class, state-of-the-art.
We want to build for the future. We wanted to find a partner who would be able to hook into the most systems, who would be looked upon as the standard. So Azure seemed to be the natural choice.
It supports things like identity protection, which is quite key for us to monitor the sign-ins, cloud app security. We want to do seamless single sign-on, so use gallery apps or pre-integrated apps which are already there.
Using Azure will help our revenue stream. Something that may have taken months, we can now do in a matter of days. And that can be the difference between us winning the business and not getting the business.
Because we got support in terms of roadmaps, what is happening with the B2B framework, and what we can actually deliver, what are the possibilities. And that's what actually kept us going for B2B and allowed us to deliver B2B framework successfully. There are many identity and access management products in the world, but there is not even a single product which can deliver B2C, B2E, and B2B the way Microsoft Azure AD does it. I would even go to say that I can't imagine a world without Azure AD B2B. Our security is much stronger, much better, and much more resilient than fast.
We feel this partnership with Microsoft is going to be strong. We want a partnership that's going to go on for decades, hopefully, not just a matter of years.
All right. And with that, please evaluate. The speakers have a bit of a competition about who gets the best review, so please let me know. And 5 stars are great, but if you don't think it's 5 stars, that's okay. Let me know what you think for real. Thank you.